The metal doors of the underground facility creaked open with a sound that echoed through the dark corridors. Commander Zara Kent stepped inside first, her blue skin glowing faintly in the dim emergency lighting that still flickered after all these years. She was tall and lean, with the graceful movements of her Altarian people, but her eyes held the sharp focus of someone who had seen too many dead worlds. "Atmosphere is stable," called out Dr. Vex Thorian from behind her, checking his scanner. The small gray-skinned scientist had to hurry to keep up with the commander's long strides. Whatever power source they used down here, it's still working after all this time. Captain Rex Dorian brought up the rear, his massive frame barely fitting through the doorway. His people, the Korathi, were known for their strength and loyalty, which made them perfect for security work. His hand rested on his weapon as he scanned. The shadows around them. "How long did you say this place has been abandoned?" Rex asked, his deep voice rumbling through the corridor. "According to our records, the last human signals from this planet stopped about 212 years ago," Zara replied, consulting her datapad. "Right around the time the Dominion finished their purge of the species." They walked deeper into the facility, following the main corridor that stretched ahead of them. The walls were made of a strange metal that seemed to absorb their flashlight. Beams and strange symbols covered every surface. The humans had been a curious species, always marking their territory with their odd written language. "I still don't understand why the Dominion was so afraid of them," Vex muttered, taking readings as they walked. "The historical records show they were just another primitive species. Sure, they were aggressive, but so are dozens of other races." "Maybe." "That's exactly why," Zara said quietly. "Sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who refuse to give up." The corridor opened into a large chamber filled with strange equipment. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens dark but somehow still humming with power. In the center of the room stood dozens of large cylindrical containers, each one tall enough to hold a person. "Cryogenic pods," Rex observed, walking up to examine one of the containers. "Looks like they were trying to preserve something." Vex hurried over with his scanner, excitement clear in his voice. "This is incredible technology. Most species can barely keep organic matter frozen for a few decades without cellular damage. These systems look like they were designed to work for centuries." Zara moved from pod to pod, checking each one. Most were dark and silent, their occupants long since dead from system failures or power loss. But as she reached the far end of the chamber, she stopped. Rex, come look at this," she called out. One pod was different from the others. While the rest were dark and cold, this one glowed with a soft blue light. Its displays showed active readings, and the sound of machinery working filled the air around it. "It's still functioning," Vex said in amazement, pressing his face to the scanner built into the pod's side. "There's definitely a life form inside, and it's alive." Through the frosted glass window, they could see the outline of a figure inside. It was clearly humanoid, with the right proportions and features that matched the historical records of the extinct human species. "A human," Zara breathed. "A living human. The first one anyone has seen in over 2 centuries, Vex added, his scientific excitement overriding his usual caution. "Do you understand what this means? We could learn so much about their species. Their culture, their technology." Rex stepped closer to the pod, studying the control panel. "These readings look stable. Whatever this system is, it's been keeping him alive all this time." Zara walked around the pod, taking in every detail. The human inside appeared to be male, probably around 30 years old based on the visible features. He had dark hair and appeared to be in excellent physical condition, even after centuries of frozen sleep. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a nameplate on the pod's base. "Lieutenant Jack Morrison, United Earth Defense Force. There's a service record here, too." Vex was already pulling up historical files on his datapad. United Earth Defense Force, that was their military organization. If this man was a soldier, he might have information about human military capabilities that we've never had access to. "The Federation Council will want to know about this immediately," Zara said, but her voice showed she was thinking about something else. "The question is, What do we do with him? We have to revive him, Vex said immediately. The scientific value alone is worth the risk? Think about what we could learn from a living human specimen. Rex looked less certain. Commander, with respect, the humans were wiped out for a reason. The Dominion doesn't usually commit genocide unless they have a very good reason to fear a species. That was over 200 years ago, Vex argued. What could one man do against the entire galaxy? Besides, he'll be completely alone, the last of his kind. He'll need our help just to survive. Zara stared at the pod for a long moment, weighing the options. The Federation had strict rules about interfering with extinct species, but they also had a responsibility to preserve life when possible, and the knowledge they could gain from this human could be invaluable. We'll take him back to the ship, she decided. But we proceed carefully. Full quarantine protocols, constant monitoring, and we don't make any moves without approval from the Federation Council. I'll need to study these systems before we attempt revival, Vex said, already connecting his equipment to the pod's control. Systems. The human physiology is different from most species. We need to understand exactly how their technology works before we risk damaging him. As they prepared to move the pod, Rex continued to study the other equipment in the chamber. Commander, you should see this. He called out from across the room. He was standing in front of a large display screen that had activated when he approached. Images flowed across it, showing what appeared to be historical records of the human species. There were pictures of their cities, their technology, their people. It's some kind of archive, Rex said. Look at these images of their military forces. The screen showed human soldiers in advanced armor, carrying weapons that looked far more sophisticated than anything in the Federation's historical records. The humans in the images looked strong and disciplined, moving with a confidence that suggested they were used to winning battles. These don't match our historical data, Vex said, studying the images. Our records show humans as a relatively primitive species with basic technology. These images suggest they were much more advanced than we thought. Maybe our records were incomplete, Zara suggested. The Dominion might have destroyed most of the evidence of human capabilities to cover up why they were so afraid of them. They spent the next few hours carefully preparing the pod for transport. The human inside remained stable, his life signs strong despite the centuries of frozen sleep. Whatever technology had kept him alive was clearly far beyond what the Federation had credited the humans with possessing. As they loaded the pod onto their transport ship, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to change everything. The Federation had existed for over 1,000 years, maintaining peace between hundreds of species. But they had never encountered a human before. Set course for Beacon Prime, she ordered as they secured the pod in the ship's medical bay. And send a priority message to the Federation Council. Tell them we're bringing them something that's going to change everything they thought they knew about the human species. As their ship lifted off from the dead planet, none of them noticed that the pod's readings had changed slightly. The human inside was beginning to show signs of natural awakening, his body responding to the change in environment, deep in his frozen dreams. Lieutenant Jack Morrison was starting to remember who he was and what he had lost. And when he finally opened his eyes, the galaxy would learn why the Dominion had been so desperate to destroy every last human in existence. The last human was about to wake up, and nothing would ever be the same again. The revival process took 3 days aboard the research station Beacon Prime. Dr. Lisa Morgan watched the monitors carefully as the ancient human cryogenic system slowly brought Jack Morrison back to life. She had studied humans for most of her career, but she had never expected to actually meet one. Lisa was a Terran specialist, one of the few scientists in the Federation who had dedicated her life to understanding the extinct human species. She had read every report, studied every artifact, and analyzed every piece of data the Federation had collected about humanity. But all of that was nothing compared to watching a real human's eyes open for the first time in over 2 centuries. The awakening happened gradually. First, Jack's fingers began to move slightly. Then his breathing changed from the slow, mechanical rhythm of the cryogenic systems to something more natural. His heart rate increased, and his brain activity spiked on the monitors around his medical bed. When his eyes finally opened, they were clear and alert. Most beings who came out of long-term cryogenic sleep were confused and disoriented for hours or even days. Jack Morrison looked around the medical bay with the calm assessment of a trained soldier. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough from the long sleep but steady. Lisa stepped forward, her translation device converting her words into the ancient human language. "You're safe," she said. "You're aboard a Federation research station." "My name is Dr. Lisa Morgan. Do you remember your name?" Jack sat up slowly, testing his body's responses. "Lieutenant Jack Morrison, United Earth Defense Force, serial number 7-7-4-Alpha-9-2. He paused, studying Lisa's face. "You're not human." "No," Lisa said gently. "I'm Altarian." "Jack, I need to tell you something important. How much do you remember about going into cryogenic sleep?" Jack's eyes grew distant as he searched his memories. "There was an attack. The Dominion had found Earth. We were losing the war. The evacuation protocols failed." His voice hardened. "They were killing everyone, men, women, children. It didn't matter to them." Lisa felt her heart break as she watched the realization dawn on his face. "Jack, that was over 200 years ago. The Dominion succeeded in their campaign against humanity. As far as we know, you're the only human left alive." The silence that followed was heavy and terrible. Lisa had expected Jack to scream, to cry, to rage against the unfairness of it all. Instead, he simply nodded once and asked, "Who's in charge now?" "The Galactic Federation maintains peace between most species," Lisa explained. "The Dominion Empire still exists, but they're contained to their own territory. There hasn't been a major war in over a century." Jack stood up from the medical bed, testing his balance. Lisa was surprised by how quickly he had recovered from the cryogenic sleep. Most beings needed days to regain their full mobility. "I need to be debriefed," Jack said. "Someone needs to know what the Dominion is really capable of. If they're still out there, then the war isn't over." Commander Zara Kempf entered the medical bay at that moment, flanked by 2 security guards. She had been watching the revival process from the observation deck, trying to gauge what kind of threat or asset they were dealing with. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said formally. "I'm Commander Zara Kempf of the Federation Research Division. We need to run some tests to make sure you're healthy after your long sleep." Jack studied the commander with the same calm assessment he had shown Lisa. "What kind of tests?" "Standard medical procedures," Lisa said quickly. "We need to make sure the cryogenic process didn't cause any damage to your body or mind." What followed over the next several days revealed things that shocked everyone involved. Jack's physical capabilities were far beyond anything the Federation had on record about humans. When they tested his grip strength, he accidentally crushed the testing device. When they measured his reaction time, their equipment couldn't keep up with his responses. "This can't be right," Lisa muttered, staring at the test results. "According to these readings, his bone density is 3 times normal human levels. His muscle fibers are incredibly dense. It's like he's been genetically enhanced," Jack overheard her comments. "I was part of Project Titan," he said simply. "Enhanced soldiers for deep space operations. The program was classified, so it probably wasn't in your historical records." Dr. Vex Thorian, who had been observing the tests, stepped forward. "Enhanced how? What kind of modifications were done to you?" "Physical improvements mostly," Jack replied. "Stronger bones, denser muscles, faster reflexes, enhanced healing. Some cognitive improvements too, but nothing that changed who I am as a person." Lisa was fascinated. "This explains why our historical data about humans was so incomplete. We were only seeing civilian populations and regular colonists. We never encountered your military elite." The real shock came during a routine exercise session. Jack had requested access to a gymnasium to maintain his fitness, and Lisa had arranged for him to use one of the station's training facilities. What happened next changed everything. Jack began with simple push-ups. the kind of basic exercise that any species might do to stay in shape. But as he worked out, stress fractures began appearing in the reinforced floor plating beneath him. The gymnasium floor was designed to withstand starship impacts, yet Jack's routine exercise was damaging it. "Stop," Lisa called out, but Jack was already standing up, looking confused at the damage around him. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't realize I was pushing too hard. I'll be more careful." Lisa stared at the cracked floor plates. "Jack, you weren't trying to damage anything. This happened just from normal exercise." "I guess I'm stronger than I used to be," Jack said with a shrug. "The cryogenic process might have affected my enhancements somehow." But Lisa was beginning to understand that it wasn't just his physical capabilities that were beyond normal human ranges. Over the following days, she noticed that Jack was learning at an incredible rate. He absorbed new languages like a sponge, quickly picking up basic Federation standard and several other common languages. When she gave him access to technical manuals about the station's systems, he read through them in hours and began asking questions that showed he understood complex engineering principles that should have taken weeks to master. "Jack," she said one evening as they sat in the station's observation lounge, "how much of the station's layout do you know?" He looked at her with a slight smile. "Most of it. I've been paying attention during our walks around the facility." "Why do you ask?" Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Jack hadn't just been paying attention during their guided tours. He had been systematically mapping the entire station, learning its systems, and understanding its capabilities. His questions about Federation technology and military structure suddenly seemed less innocent. "You're gathering intelligence," she said. "Quietly, old habits," Jack replied. "A soldier always knows his environment." Commander Zara had been right to be cautious. Jack Morrison wasn't just a surviving human specimen. He was an enhanced super soldier whose capabilities far exceeded anything the Federation had in their records. And despite his friendly demeanor, he was clearly still thinking like a military operative in potentially hostile territory. The Federation Council received Lisa's reports with growing alarm. They had wanted to study an extinct species, but they had awakened something that might be far more dangerous than they had imagined. The Dominion had wiped out humanity for a reason, and now they were beginning to understand what that reason might have been. Jack Morrison was charming, intelligent, and seemingly cooperative, but he was also a weapon of war unlike anything the galaxy had seen in over 2 centuries. And every day he was learning more about the Federation's capabilities, their weaknesses, and their military structure. The question that kept everyone awake at night was simple: what did the last human really want? And more importantly, what was he planning to do about the species that had destroyed his entire world? 3 weeks had passed since Jack Morrison's awakening, and the tension on Beacon Prime was growing thicker each day. Dr. Lisa Morgan found herself both fascinated and terrified by her patient. Every test revealed new capabilities that defied everything the Federation thought they knew about humans. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine physical therapy session. Jack had been complaining about feeling restless, so Lisa had arranged for him to use the station's main gymnasium during off hours when no other personnel would be around. She watched from the observation deck as Jack began his workout. He started with basic exercises, but even these simple movements were causing problems. When he did jumping jacks, the vibrations shook the entire gymnasium. When he attempted to use the exercise equipment, the machines broke under the stress of his enhanced strength. "This isn't working," Jack called up to her. "Everything here is too fragile." Lisa activated the communication system. "Just do what you can, Jack. We'll find better equipment for you." But Jack had already moved on to something else. He found an empty section of the gymnasium and began practicing what looked like combat moves. His movements were fluid and precise, each punch and kick executed with perfect form. The air around him seemed to hum with barely contained energy. That's when the emergency alarm began to sound throughout the station. "All personnel to emergency stations," came the announcement over the intercom. "We have a distress signal from Federation Outpost Delta 7. Dominion raiders are attacking the facility." Lisa saw Jack's entire demeanor change in an instant. The relaxed, friendly human she had been working with disappeared, replaced by something cold and focused. His eyes became sharp and calculating, and his body moved with a predatory grace that made her take a step back from the observation window. "Where is Outpost Delta 7? Jack asked, his voice carrying clearly through the communication system. "About 6 hours away at maximum warp," Lisa replied. "Jack, you need to stay here. This doesn't concern you." But Jack was already moving toward the gymnasium's exit. "How many people are at that outpost?" "About 300 Federation personnel." "And their families," Lisa said, following him as he strode through the corridors. "Jack, please. The Federation has protocols for this kind of situation." "Military vessels are already responding." "How long until they arrive?" Jack asked, not slowing his pace. Lisa checked her datapad. 8 hours, maybe 10. "But Jack, you can't possibly think you can help? You're one person." Jack stopped walking and turned to face her. The look in his eyes made her heart skip a beat. "Dr. Morgan, my species is extinct because nobody helped us when the Dominion came. I won't let that happen to anyone else." Commander Zara Kent arrived at that moment, flanked by security guards. She had been monitoring the situation from the command center. "Mr. Morrison, you're restricted to the research sections of this station. You cannot leave without proper authorization." Jack looked at the security guards, then back at Zara. "Commander, how many ships do you have available for immediate deployment?" "That information is classified," Zara replied firmly. "Then it's not your concern." 300 people are about to die," Jack said quietly. "It is my concern." The argument that followed was brief but intense. Jack wanted to join the rescue mission, while Zara insisted that he remain on the station for his own safety and the safety of others. In the end, a compromise was reached. Jack would be allowed to accompany the rescue force as an observer, but he would remain aboard the ship and not participate in any combat operations. Captain Ben Hayes commanded the Federation. Frigate New Dawn, which was the fastest ship available for the mission. As they prepared to depart, he briefed Jack on the situation. "Intelligence suggests it's a standard Dominion raiding party," Captain Hayes explained. "Probably about 50 warriors looking for slaves and resources. They've got the outpost surrounded, but the facility's shields are still holding." Jack studied the tactical display with the focused attention of a professional soldier. "What's your plan of attack?" "We'll engage their ships in orbit while our Marines assault their ground positions," Hayes replied. "It's not complicated, but it should be effective." The journey to Delta 7 took 6 hours at maximum warp. During the trip, Jack spent most of his time in the ship's gym, practicing combat moves and staying in peak physical condition. The crew gave him a wide berth, unsettled by the intensity of his training. When they dropped out of warp at the outpost, the situation was worse than expected. The Dominion had brought more ships than intelligence had suggested, and the outpost's shields were failing. Smoke was rising from several buildings, and the communication channels were filled with desperate calls for help. "The ground team is requesting immediate support," the communications officer reported. "The Dominion forces have breached the outer perimeter," Captain Hayes cursed under his breath. "We need to get our Marines down there now, before they overrun the entire facility." Jack stood up from his observer's position. "Captain, let me go with the assault team." "Absolutely not," Hayes replied. "You're a civilian observer. You stay on the ship." "Captain," Jack said, his voice deadly serious, "I'm not a civilian. I'm a soldier, and those people down there are running out of time." The debate was cut short when the ship's sensors detected Dominion reinforcements approaching. The rescue mission was rapidly becoming a fight for survival. "Sir," called out the tactical officer, "we're outnumbered 3-1. Our Marines won't be able to hold their ground against those numbers." Hayes looked at Jack, then at the tactical display showing the overwhelming Dominion force. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Let me go down there," Jack said simply. "I can buy your Marines time to evacuate the civilians." "You're one person against 50 Dominion warriors," Hayes protested. "It's suicide." Jack smiled, and for the first time since his awakening, it wasn't a friendly expression. Captain, you don't understand what the Dominion did to my people. They didn't just kill us, they hunted us. They made it personal. And now I'm going to show them what happens when you make it personal with a human. The insertion was done by emergency transport beam. Jack materialized on the surface of Delta 7 in the middle of the battle zone, with Dominion warriors advancing on all sides toward the failing outpost shields. The Federation Marines who were supposed to be his backup watched in amazement as Jack moved through the battlefield. He didn't run toward the enemy. He flowed toward them, moving with a speed and grace that their eyes could barely track. The first Dominion warrior he encountered was twice his size, covered in advanced battle armor and carrying a weapon that could punch through starship hull plating. Jack reached the alien in 3 steps, grabbed its weapon, and used it to cave in the warrior's skull in one fluid motion. The second warrior tried to shoot him with an energy rifle. Jack moved faster than the alien could track, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. His bare hands tore through the warrior's armor like it was made of paper. More Dominion forces converged on his position, but Jack had already moved on. He flowed through their ranks like water, striking with precision and devastating effect. His enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge energy beams that should have been impossible to avoid. His enhanced strength let him tear through alien battle gear that was designed to stop starship weapons. The battle that should have lasted hours was over in 20 minutes. When the shooting stopped, Jack stood alone in the middle of the battlefield, surrounded by the wreckage of the Dominion raiding party. He wasn't even breathing hard. Captain Hayes materialized beside him with a security team, staring at the carnage with wide eyes. How is this possible? Jack looked at the destroyed Dominion forces, then at the Federation captain. This is why they killed us all, he said quietly. They knew that if even one of us survived, we'd come for them eventually. The rescue of Delta 7 was complete, but the real revelation was just beginning. The Federation had always wondered why the Dominion had been so desperate to completely exterminate humanity. Now they knew. Humans weren't just another species. They were something else entirely, and Jack Morrison had just announced to the galaxy that humanity was back. The news of what happened at Delta 7 spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of the rescue, reports were flowing through Federation communication, networks about the human who had single-handedly destroyed an entire Dominion raiding party. Despite attempts to classify the information, word leaked to civilian channels and then to the broader galactic community. In the Dominion Empire, the reaction was immediate and terrifying. Emperor Krex Vorthak, the massive reptilian ruler who had personally overseen the human genocide 2 centuries earlier, called an emergency session of his war council when the reports reached him. "Impossible," snarled General Vec Morvain, the Emperor's chief military advisor. "All humans were eliminated. We made certain of that. Every world, every ship, every colony, nothing was left alive. Evidently we were not thorough enough," Emperor Vorthak replied, his voice carrying the cold fury that had made him feared throughout the galaxy. "One survived. One was enough." The Emperor's claws scraped against the metal of his throne as he studied the battle reports from Delta 7. The descriptions of the humans' capabilities matched the worst nightmares from the old war. Enhanced speed, impossible strength, tactical genius that allowed one being to outfight dozens of trained warriors. "Mobilize every available fleet," Vorthak ordered. "I want that human found and eliminated before he can do any more damage. And I want the Federation facility that harbored him destroyed as well." Back on Beacon Prime, the atmosphere had changed completely. Jack Morrison was no longer a research subject or a curiosity. He was now the most wanted being in the galaxy, and his presence put everyone on the station at risk. Dr. Lisa Morgan found herself caught between her scientific fascination with Jack and her growing fear of what he represented. She watched him in the station's observation lounge, staring out at the stars with an expression she couldn't read. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, settling into the chair beside him. Jack didn't look away from the stars. "I'm thinking about my wife, Sarah, my daughter, Emma, my son, Danny. They were at the evacuation center when the Dominion broke through our defenses. His voice was quiet but filled with pain. I never got to say goodbye. Lisa felt her heart break for him. Jack, I'm sorry. I can't imagine what that loss feels like. Yes, you can, Jack replied, finally turning to look at her. Your species has never faced extinction, but you can imagine it, every parent watching their children die. Every couple torn apart. Every dream and hope and memory wiped out forever. His eyes grew cold. The Dominion did that to us because they were afraid we might become a threat to them someday. What are you going to do now? Lisa asked, though she was afraid of the answer. I'm going to make them regret that decision, Jack said simply. Commander Zara Kent arrived at that moment, her face grim. Jack, we need to talk. The Federation. Council has made a decision about your status. They moved to a secure briefing room where Zara laid out the situation. The Dominion has declared you a galactic terrorist. They're offering a massive reward for your capture, dead or alive. They've also threatened to attack any Federation facility that harbors you. So you're kicking me out? Jack said without emotion. The Council wants to relocate you to a secure facility where you can be protected, Zara explained. Somewhere. The Dominion can't find you. Jack stood up slowly. Commander, with respect, I don't need protection. And I won't hide while the beings who murdered my species continue to rule a third of the galaxy. You're one person, Zara protested. What can you possibly do against an entire empire? I can make them pay, Jack replied. One ship at a time, one world at a time, one life at a time. Until they understand what they took from me. The conversation was interrupted by alarms throughout the station. The tactical officer's voice came over the intercom with barely controlled panic. Commander to the bridge immediately. We have multiple Dominion signatures dropping out of hyperspace. The main view screen showed a terrifying sight. 12 Dominion warships had appeared around Beacon Prime, their weapons already charging for attack. It was the largest Dominion force seen in Federation space in over 50 years. They found us, Zara breathed. They actually came here. Jack studied the enemy formation with professional interest. No, Commander, they didn't come here to find me. They came here to kill me, and everyone else on this station. The Dominion Fleet Commander opened a communication channel. His scaled face filled the screen, showing the typical arrogance of his species. Federation vessel, you are harboring a dangerous criminal. Surrender the human immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Zara stepped forward. This is a civilian research station operating under Federation protection. You have no authority here. The Dominion commander laughed, a sound like breaking glass. We claimed authority over humans 2 centuries ago. Now we will finish what we started. The first energy beam struck Beacon Prime's shields, causing the entire station to shudder. The station's defensive systems were designed for research, not military engagement. They wouldn't last long against a full Dominion assault. How long can our shields hold? Zara asked her tactical officer. Maybe 10 minutes at this rate of fire, came the grim reply. Jack was already moving toward the docking bay. I need a ship, he said. You can't fight 12 warships, Lisa protested, following him. It's suicide. Maybe, Jack agreed, but I won't let them kill innocent people because of me. He stopped at the docking bay's main computer terminal and began accessing the station's systems. His fingers moved across the controls with inhuman speed, hacking through security protocols that should have taken hours to break. What are you doing? Zara demanded. Getting what I need, Jack replied. Within minutes, he had accessed the station's complete technical database, downloading everything from ship schematics to weapon specifications to navigational charts. He selected a small Federation courier ship, fast but lightly armed, as he prepared for launch. Lisa grabbed his arm. Jack, don't do this. Find another way. He looked at her with something that might have been affection. Dr. Morgan, you've been kind to me. When this is over, tell the Federation Council something for me. What? Tell them that humanity didn't die on Earth, we just went to sleep for a while, but we're awake now. Jack's ship launched from Beacon Prime just as the station's shields failed. The Dominion warships immediately shifted their fire to the small courier vessel. But Jack was already moving with a skill that defied belief. The carrier ship danced between energy beams that should have vaporized it instantly. Jack used the station's superstructure as cover, weaving through the docking arms and sensor arrays with precision that made veteran pilots gasp in amazement, but he wasn't running away. As the Dominion ships focused on him, Jack began modifying his ship's systems in real time. He rerouted power, bypassed safety protocols, and pushed the little courier ship far beyond its design specifications. The first Dominion warship exploded when Jack's modified torpedo punched through its shields and detonated inside its engine core. The second ship tried to ram him, but Jack's enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge at the last possible second, causing the massive warship to slam into one of its own allies. The battle continued for over an hour, with Jack systematically destroying Dominion ships that were 10 times larger and more heavily armed than his own vessel. He used tactics that no one had ever seen before, combining human intuition with enhanced reflexes and a complete disregard for his own safety. When the last Dominion ship exploded, Jack's courier was barely holding together. But he had done the impossible. One human in a small ship had defeated an entire Dominion battle fleet. As rescue ships from Beacon Prime approached his damaged vessel, Jack opened a communication channel to the station. "Commander Kent," he said, his voice tired but determined. "I'm leaving Federation space. I have work to do in Dominion territory." "Jack, wait," Lisa's voice came over the channel. "You don't have to do this alone." "Yes, I do," Jack replied. "This is what I was made for." The Dominion wanted to exterminate humanity because they were afraid we'd come for them someday. Well, someday is here. His ship limped away from Beacon Prime, heading toward the edge of Federation space and the beginning of Dominion territory. Behind him, he left a space station full of people who finally understood why the Dominion had been so desperate to destroy every last human. The war that had ended 2 centuries ago was about to begin again. And this time, humanity would not be caught off guard. Jack Morrison's war against the Dominion Empire began in the Outer Rim territories, where the aliens kept their slave processing centers. These were the facilities where conquered species were prepared for extinction, just as the humans had been 2 centuries before. Jack had studied the Dominion's methods during his time on Beacon Prime, and he knew exactly where to strike first. His first target was processing Station Omega-12, a massive orbital facility where thousands of beings from dozens of species waited in cages for their final fate. Jack's modified courier ship, now bristling with weapons he had built from salvaged Dominion technology, appeared without warning in the station's defensive perimeter. The station's commander, a cruel Dominion officer named Captain Vex Theron, received the transmission with amusement. "One small ship against our entire defense force? This human must be insane." But Jack wasn't trying to fight his way through the defenses. Instead, he broadcast a message on all frequencies, speaking in dozens of languages that his enhanced brain had learned from Federation databases. "My name is Jack Morrison," his voice carried across every communication channel in the system. "I am human. 200 years ago, the Dominion murdered my entire species. They did it because they were afraid of what we might become. Today, I'm here to show them they were right to be afraid." What followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jack's ship moved through the Dominion defenses like a force of nature, destroying weapons platforms and guard ships with surgical precision. But he wasn't just fighting. He was sending a message that spread across the galaxy faster than any military communication. Species that had been conquered by the Dominion for generations suddenly remembered what it felt like to fight back. On worlds where alien slaves had accepted their fate, rebellion sparked to life. Jack Morrison became a symbol of hope for billions of beings who had given up on freedom. The Dominion response was swift and brutal. Emperor Vorthak ordered every available ship to hunt down the human terrorist. But Jack was always one step ahead of them, striking at targets they couldn't predict and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. On Kepler 7, he destroyed a Dominion weapons factory and freed 3,000 slaves. On Rigel Station, He sabotaged their communication hub and broadcast footage of Dominion atrocities to every world in the sector. On Zarian Prime, he assassinated a Dominion governor who had personally overseen the massacre of an entire species. Each victory inspired more rebellions. Species that had been enslaved for generations rose up against their oppressors. Former Dominion subjects declared independence. The empire that had seemed unshakable for centuries began to crack under the pressure of countless small rebellions. Dr. Lisa Morgan watched the reports from Beacon Prime with a mixture of admiration and horror. Jack was keeping his promise to make the Dominion pay, but the cost in lives was enormous. Every rebellion was met with savage retaliation from Dominion forces. "He's starting a galactic war," Commander Zara said as they watched the latest reports from the Outer Rim. "No," Lisa replied quietly. "He's finishing one that started 200 years ago." The Federation Council was divided on how to respond. Some wanted to support Jack's rebellion, while others feared it would drag the Federation into a war they couldn't win. But the decision was taken out of their hands when Dominion forces began attacking Federation border worlds, claiming they were harboring human sympathizers. Emperor Vorthak's obsession with destroying Jack Morrison was consuming his empire. He recalled fleets from conquered territories to hunt for one human, leaving those worlds vulnerable to rebellion. His generals began to question his judgment, but none dared to speak against him openly. The final confrontation began when Jack sent a direct message to the Emperor himself. The transmission reached the Dominion capital world during a meeting of the High Command, interrupting their war planning with Jack's face on every screen. "Emperor Vorthak," Jack said, his voice carrying the weight of 2 centuries of grief and rage. "You wanted to exterminate humanity because you were afraid we'd come for you. You were right. I'm coming for you now. Just me, just one human against your entire empire. Let's see who's stronger." The message included coordinates for the Titan Nebula, the same area where humanity had made its last stand against the Dominion so long ago. It was where Jack's wife and children had died. It was where he intended to end this war, one way or another. Vorthak took the bait, mobilizing the largest fleet in Dominion history. Over 1,000 warships converged on the nebula, forming a sphere of destruction that could have conquered entire star systems. Against this massive force, Jack Morrison brought only his single modified courier ship and 2 centuries of accumulated rage. The battle began at dawn by the nebula's strange time flow. Jack's ship emerged from the swirling cosmic dust like an avenging spirit, moving faster than anything the Dominion forces had ever encountered. His weapons, cobbled together from a dozen different technologies, struck with devastating precision. The first wave of Dominion ships fell within minutes, their formations broken by tactics they couldn't understand or counter. Jack fought like no being they had ever faced, predicting their moves and turning their own strength against them. His enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge massive energy beams while returning fire with weapons that punched through their heaviest armor. But even Jack Morrison couldn't fight 1,000 ships forever. His courier took hit after hit, systems failing one by one as the overwhelming Dominion force pressed their attack. Yet he continued to fight, destroying ship after ship even as his own vessel fell apart around him. Emperor Vorthak, watching from his flagship Extinction's Edge, finally understood what his species had unleashed when they murdered humanity. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to make their enemies pay for every victory. Even facing certain death, Jack Morrison was extracting a terrible price from the Dominion fleet. "He's insane," General Morvain whispered as another group of warships exploded under Jack's assault. "No," Vorthak replied, his voice filled with something that might have been respect. "He's human. This is what we were afraid of. This is why we had to kill them all." Jack's final gambit came when his ship's engines finally failed. Instead of surrendering or trying to escape, he set course directly for the Emperor's flagship. His damaged courier, pushed far beyond its design limits, became a guided missile aimed at the heart of the Dominion fleet. The explosion that followed lit up the entire nebula. When the energy cleared, both ships were gone, consumed in a fireball that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The Dominion fleet hung motionless in space, their emperor dead. Their command structure shattered, but Jack Morrison's war didn't end with his death. The rebellions he had started continued to spread across the galaxy. Species that had been conquered for generations declared their independence. The Dominion Empire, weakened by internal conflict and the loss of their emperor, began to collapse from within. 3 days after the battle, a single escape pod was recovered from the debris field by a Federation rescue ship. Inside, barely alive, but still breathing, was Jack Morrison. His body was broken, his ship destroyed, but his will remained unbroken. Dr. Lisa Morgan was there when he woke up in the medical bay of the rescue vessel. "Jack," she said softly, "it's over. Vorthak is dead. The Dominion is falling apart." Jack looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death and destruction. "No," he said quietly, "this was just the beginning. There are 12 more Dominion worlds that participated in the genocide, and I have nothing but time." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the truth. Jack Morrison hadn't been trying to die in that final battle. He had been making a statement. The human species was officially extinct no more, and the galaxy would never be the same. As Jack recovered from his injuries, reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy. Rebellions were succeeding on worlds that had been enslaved for centuries. Former Dominion subjects were forming new alliances. The balance of power that had existed for generations was shifting. The Federation Council finally understood what they had awakened when they revived that human from his cryogenic sleep. They hadn't just brought back an extinct species. They had unleashed a force of nature that would reshape the galaxy. Jack Morrison stood at the observation deck of the medical ship, looking out at the stars where his people had once lived. He was the last human, but he would not be the final human. Somewhere in those stars he would find a way to rebuild what had been lost. The Dominion had been right to fear humanity, but their genocide had only made that fear a reality. And now the galaxy would learn what happened when you tried to destroy something that refused to stay dead.